Welcome to episode 8 of Iconic Seasons, 1987, the year that saw one of the most iconic matchups in NCAA basketball history. On today's episode, we're going to be recapping the second Final Four game between Indiana and UNLV. This game was everything you could ever want in a championship matchup. It had two of the best teams in the country, some of the most exciting players in the game, and it came down to the wire. We'll start by interviewing former Hoosier Six man Joe Hillman, who was on the court for all the action. Then, Robert and I deep dive into the game, breaking down every key play and moment. If you're a fan of basketball, you don't want to miss this episode. Tune in, and if you like it, leave us a rating or review. This is episode 8 of Iconic Seasons, 1987. All right, we're talking IU UNLV today, the Final Four game, and we start out by setting the scene. And this year's just different with the huge crowds and the New Orleans location, the different storylines coming into the Final Four. So I want to start out, get your perspective on what you thought about the location in New Orleans, just the teams in IU UNLV and coming into this game.
I mean, the atmosphere is just crazy, right? I mean, they got the most fans to ever attend a game. Like, they show the Superdome, and up there on the ceiling or in the upper seats, you can't even hardly see the floor. I mean, personally, I'm not the biggest person on heights. I don't think I'd want to sit up there. I'd probably just watch it on TV because you'd be able to see it.
Yeah.
But just like the atmosphere of walking down the strip, you know, crazy parties, like I could only imagine the scene. I mean, it had to be almost like a Mardi Gras scene, right?
For sure.
You know, you see some of the wildest things at the Final Four, especially when it's in a place like New Orleans. First of all, there's people to meet, like Armin Gilliam and Ronnie Cycli of Syracuse, and Gary Graham giving Cycli a left hook with his voodoo doll. You see players stepping out of their favorite disco in New Orleans. Then there's David Willard meeting up with the Providence cheerleaders.
UNLV #1, bros.
Everywhere you go in New Orleans, you see these human sharks.
This is the home of decadence. It's this would make Las Vegas look a little bit like a synagogue.
This is a wild place, you know.
This is the Disney World for adult people, and I think it's the most beautiful place on earth for me.
And you had a very exciting team in UNLV coming up and down. This is like the beginning of the three-point run and gun, right? Like the excitement.
It's literally the beginning since it's the first year.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just like a different type of basketball, more exciting type of basketball that before, you know, people could stay in the paint or whatever, and it kind of got boring. But now you're just running. They're firing it. There's probably more dunks because the floor is more open. And then, you know, you got IU, which was a powerhouse back then on a regular basis, that come in with a different style of play that had to see how that was going to compare to the new style, right? So there's a lot of buzz on how they were going to be able to adjust, right?
Yeah, I think we watched a couple of news programs just about the size of the Superdome, and it is, like someone said, it's the 8th wonder of the world, and 68,000 people.
Well, we've got the largest crowd ever for a college basketball game watching the Final Four here in the Dome, 64,959. And folks, not everybody has a perfect seat here, I might point out. We're going to show you a couple of them.
27 stories above the action and paid $17.50. You got to wonder if they get their money's worth. As a matter of fact, one fan I talked to said that from up here, the game is nothing but a rumor. Brent?
Then there were players amazed at an arena that's got to be about 3 times the size of the Thomas and Mack.
God, Ron, I don't really have to say anything about this place. This is huge. It's beautiful, though.
I never seen nothing like this before. It's like one of the 8th wonders of the world or something like that to me, you know.
And it's hard for people to imagine maybe now. Maybe a lot of the people listening to this might be able to dial in like how bad TVs were. So it was probably still worth going to the game just for the atmosphere, even if you would have been far away. Because I remember watching TV in the 80s on a tiny little TV. So it's not, we're thinking of our like beautiful flat screens and HD now. So yeah, compared to that, it would be awful to sit in those seats. But maybe in 1987, it still might have been worth it.
I guess it's true. Just being in the atmosphere, the crowd's going crazy. You know, I mean, I'm sure they had an audio system in there that had to be pretty loud to where everybody could hear at least what's going on if they couldn't see it perfectly. So yeah, you're probably right. The TVs probably weren't the best back then. You probably couldn't tell. It was probably more people listening to it on the radio back then than the TV.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I wanted to get your take too on just the preparation for this, because of course by now, hopefully if people haven't already, you should go back and listen to the Hillman and the Freddie Banks interviews, because they talk about the different preparations leading up to this game. IU treats this as like any other game, basically. They stay in Bloomington, they're doing their regular practices, everything is like on TV. Meanwhile, Vegas flies in at the beginning of the week, and Tark basically says, "Hey guys, go experience the city." And you can imagine, like, I don't know, college age men, you let him go in New Orleans for a few days. He's lucky that he got everybody back. Let's just say that.
I would say that is very true. I would say they probably got in a little bit of trouble because I'm sure that they had never been in that type of situation. Some of them where. There's so much going on.
Well, my favorite is one of them says that New Orleans makes Las Vegas look tame.
Yeah, it is a different approach for sure. Like,
are you guys going to start getting your mind now on basketball a little more? I know you've had fun and had some parties for the last day or so. Is now when you're going to kick in gear for basketball?
That's what the practice is about today. Really about getting our mind back into basketball.
What are you listening to?
Dougie Fresh.
Can you hear me, Freddie?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay. Tell me how practice was today. Was it pretty intense?
Oh, it was very intense, and I think we did a pretty good job trying to do a little something that Indiana going to do, and I have a tough assignment. I got to guard Steve Alford.
What do you guys think? Are you guys ready for Indiana?
Go ahead. I know you copped out.
Come on, what do you think?
No, we're ready, man.
It is two totally different identities as far as UNLV was just like, we're going to kind of let the players be the players, do whatever they want to do, where Knight has his strict guidelines. So it is pretty much the opposite, right? So it's pretty crazy when you think of it that way.
It seemed like their mentalities coming into it, and Freddie even acknowledges as much that maybe they weren't as dialed in. Like, and I think that it can feel that way a little bit when you get to the Final Four. That is such an accomplishment that it can feel like an end of the road rather than like, hey, we've got 2 more wins to go, and I think that is interesting to try to frame it up. Like Coach Knight definitely framed it up as like, we're going there to win this. And that can, you have to almost instill that, especially if you're going up against a quality opponent.
Well, and I would think too that maybe because they went early, all the praise, all the celebration, you almost feel like you've already, like you said, that you've already won, right? And I'm sure like in these guys' heads, they're lost 1 game during the season, like they're untouchable, they're in the Final Four, like let's go party, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Where Knight kept them away from that. So maybe he's probably yelling at them, telling them they're not very good, up in Bloomington, and they don't have all these people praising them. And like they probably came in more with a mindset of let's go win this than if you were partying all week.
For sure. All right, let's talk about what jumped out. So the game starts. What jumps out to you as the game tips off and gets going?
I mean, I think that what jumped off right away was that Thomas got 3 fouls, and that was a pretty big part of IU's basketball team, especially because Gilligan was so good. I mean, it took away some of the athletic ability. I mean, IL came in and he played great, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean, obviously it was a step down.
Yeah.
But he still held his own.
Alford pulls it up, and it's going to go against Thomas. That's 2 fouls on Thomas. Down away from the ball. Dick Paparo, a tough official, comes in here and whistles 2 quick ones.
Notice how Bob Knight kept his cool there. Now that's an 2 fouls away from the ball been called right there. Thomas away from the ball completely. Can't believe it's trying to set the screens inside.
Thomas puts it down, comes to the glass, scored the field goal, and Thomas's 3rd personal foul. Offensive foul, field goal, and Steve Isle becomes the man of the moment for Indiana.
I was kind of surprised that how easy that IU kind of got through the press at the beginning and how they kind of went away from it, because that was kind of one of their identities for the year, UNLV. I mean, they averaged like 9 steals a game. But in the bigger picture, maybe it was a blessing that he got 3 fouls, right?
Maybe.
Because he dribbled the ball a lot, right? And then the same thing goes for, we'll talk about it later. I don't want to get into it yet.
No,
but,
you can go wherever.
like I thought that the biggest thing from this game that I thought is, Hillman in the second half when he came in and how he just played smart basketball, right? He might not have been the best athlete in the game by far, but he was smart. And this game, like, they couldn't afford the mistakes, because if you made a mistake, UNLV was just going to burn you, right? Because they were so fast. So that's what they wanted to do. I felt like, Smart is a really good basketball player, but he gambles more, to where Hillman was just going to do what he needed to do, and he didn't care if he was the guy. He was just happy to be out there and do whatever was asked of him, right?
No, I think that there is something to be said for that game manager, that person who is willing to control the game a little bit rather than fall into some things. Like, again, part of what made UNLV so special is that everybody on the team scored. And one of the ways that IU won this game is by limiting it just to Gilliam and Freddie Banks. That's like the only guys who really went off in this game were those two guys. Bass Knight, all their other players, just had poor shooting performances or didn't really score at all. The Wade had a ton of assists in this game, but he didn't score at all. And I think that, sometimes like coming in and controlling a piece of the game and controlling where the basketball goes, or like you said, not limiting those turnovers so that the guys who score are the guys that have to create the shot for themselves. And it's a little bit harder than if it's a steal and a fast break and a layup, and gets everybody kind of juiced on that.
Those were two-dimensional. Armin Gilliam and Freddie Banks, and that was it. Gilliam fought through the inside for 32 points, and Banks had a game-high 38. He hit 10 three-pointers, a new tournament record.
And I thought that another thing that IU did really good in this game is they gave Wade room to shoot, which it really it helped them with. I thought it helped him, in my opinion, in keeping Alford more fresh, because he was just sitting back there besides having to run around and guard him.
Yeah.
That's time he got to rest because he doesn't stop moving on offense, right? So, I think Wade probably should have been more aggressive and maybe tacked him, because, if you go downhill and the guy's just sitting there, you're going to have the advantage, right?
Yeah.
To a certain point. So I thought that was a big thing that IU did too. We'll talk about the rest of the guys, but the two guys from UNLV were pretty good though.
Amazing. Over 30 each, and just shot the heck out of it. So we can get to a little bit of that in what age the best. So these are the things that would still look amazing if we were watching the game today. Obviously the 3-point shot is around. This looks like a modern basketball game. Like if you could like somehow retrofit it into the quality of the video looking better, then you wouldn't know that this was played 30 plus years ago. Just looks fantastic. Lots of threes up and down.
Steve Alford hitting shot after shot after shot.
High level. For college basketball, this is an extremely high level of basketball. Like, they hit a ton of shots. The guys are playing hard, physical defense, great coaches. This has got everything you'd want in a game.
Oh, yeah. Definitely an instant classic, right? UNLV, the way they played in this game, it is modern basketball.
Yeah.
Like, IU, they shot threes, but nothing of as many as UNLV did. What did Banks ended up with? 8, 9, 10 threes?
10 threes.
Yeah, it's just... And the shots, the level of difficulty on some of these shots.
Yeah.
Go up with.
Wild. Like fading into the corner.
Right?
Fading into the corner.
Full blast pull-ups.
He said, this goes back to your Hillman thing. When we were interviewing Freddie, he's like, they couldn't guard me.
Well, my shooting was tremendous. I shot the ball. I really shot the ball tonight. It was no question. Everyone was in my face, and I was just shooting over them. And I was getting fouled, but, the ref didn't really protect me as much as he protects Steve. But, Steve's a great player.
But again, I think that people forget like that can, again, like take away from the rest of the team maybe a little bit. I don't know. It's hard now this far in retrospect. But one thing you could think about is like, when you're that on fire, sometimes you have to be able to step back and get another teammate a shot or a basket, just to keep them energized and engaged, even if you're hitting every shot, because there's just something about like touching the ball yourself and seeing it go in the basket that helps you to stay energized and engaged. And so sometimes it's like that recognition, and that's so hard. That's almost like a coaching thing where the coach needs to like, hey, get Jarvis a backdoor cut for a dunk, or like something to get the other guys involved, because it just never happened in this game.
No, it didn't. And I think part of that though was just the game plan that IU came in on. I mean, they were going to double team Gilliam, make it really hard on him, which he still was phenomenal.
Indiana pulls it up. Now Alford comes in all the way, and Gilliam is there with another block. He's been a monster inside. Graham coming through. 16 points here in the first half.
Gilliam, known as the Hammer, got his nickname from Spoon James. How'd you like to get a nickname from a guy called Spoon? Now that's scary.
And then they left off Wade. And really, I don't think that Banks really had a whole lot of options. Like, normally it was because they needed shots, right?
Well, he's a scorer.
And he's a scorer.
It could have been Wade's responsibility. You know?
I don't know if it took away from the rest of the team. I would just say that some of the other players could have made a couple plays. It would have really opened up the middle for Gilliam. And that would have been that much harder, right?
For sure. Yeah. Freddie's stat line, 2 for 4 from 2-point range, 10 of 19 from 3.
I mean, just think about that. 19 threes he shot and 87. Like, I know. That had to be the most threes in any game, right?
That's wild. Well, Alford 2 for 4 only in this game. So it kind of goes to your point. And by the way, those two were the only 2 that IU took for the whole game.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. Like, IU still was in the transition of converting into the new style. Like, they did a little bit more, but UNLV was all in. Yeah. Like, if you think about it, how hard would it be to be in college and you say you're a fourth-year senior and there wasn't a three-point line and you're used to playing defense a certain way, and all of a sudden it just changes. A three-point line comes out. This team's sprinting down the floor, and every year you've been used to going back, to get into position, and these guys are pulling up for three. Like, You're like, well, our first thing was always, you told us to get down here to get our position. You know what I mean? Because, like, you get preached for 3 years about you better be in your spot, and then all of a sudden you're like, no, I don't want you in that spot. I want you in that spot. You're going to have some miscues, right?
Yeah. I will say that Hillman brought something up that I do think is a valid point, even today, too, that IU does hit on. I mean, they always search for high-quality shots, and they always looked for opportunities to get fouled and go to the free throw line.
Boy, Joe Hillman really knows how to operate an offense, sitting out there at the key, finding the open man and getting open himself. Here's Hillman coming down against the full court pressure, gets the ball into Garrett's hands, and then positions himself for the offensive rebound. And here's Alford. Bangs in. A 2, and Knight is furious. They're calling it a 2. They say that his foot was on the line.
Good call by the ref, but again, Brent, Hillman, how many times has he been there today?
Go to Garrett. Against the double team, he goes to the glass.
What we're seeing right now, a clinic half-court offense by Indiana. They're taking great shots, great passing.
Which is another really efficient way to score. And sure enough, Alford, even though he only had the 2 threes, he shot 13 free throws and hit 11 out of 13 for 86% there. So, that is also a super efficient way to get points on the board. If you're not going to be hitting threes, get great shots, get fouled a bunch.
Well, I guess this is just an analogy for me. You remember when the Suns had Steve Nash and they could hit all their threes?
Yeah.
And, it worked until they got in the playoffs, and then better defensive teams, and then they usually fizzled out, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could probably compare that to this UNLV team, right? Like, IU did the things that were smarter, right? And more efficient more often, I guess you could say. Yeah. Where the other ones was more of a bigger reward, also a less return, right? Like, if they're hitting threes and they're running and making steals and stuff, they look amazing, right? But if you slow it down and they take away a couple of the players, the other ones aren't as efficient.
It's so hard because these one and done tournaments, right? It's a little even dissimilar to the NBA, because it's like they're 37-2. So it worked 37 times. It didn't work 2 times. Like, who's right? You know, like it, and then a couple of years later it works and they win, you know, they win so it's some of it in the NCAA is just luck. But I do think I want to pivot to Knight's choice here to run with them, because he could have like taken the air out of the ball. I mean, it's 45. There is a shot clock, 45-second shot clock. They don't use that very often in this game. Like they're running with them. You know, they win the game 97-93. So that IU putting up 97 points is a big number for them. So I wonder what you thought about like that approach, because he definitely thought that out. Do you think it tied back into the year before losing to Cleveland State, like the willingness to adjust, adapt, or take a big risk?
I would say this. I thought that at the end of the game, right, there was, I don't remember how many minutes left, but we had a pretty good lead. And then we tried to stall it, right? And then we ended up turning the ball over. They hit a 3. We ended up trying to stall it again. They turn it over. They get an and 1. All of a sudden, it's like 12 points to 6 points. And then they get right back in the game for a little bit right there. So I think that just proves that Knights, we're going to run with them, made sense, right? Because I think that they were incredible athletes.
And Smart was coming inside of Wade and drew the first foul on Vegas.
Wade normally can outrun anybody with the ball, but Smart's one of the best athletes in college basketball.
Billy, can you believe that we've got 6 junior college graduates out here starting? Now, with Vegas, we know, but what in the world is going on?
Well, if Bobby Knight hadn't had the 2 junior college players, he would not be in the Final Four, I can assure you.
So if you slowed it down, they were fast enough to make it really hard on you in half court. So maybe it's better to make them think about it and basically do what they do to other people. Try to use our guys, run out. Maybe they make a mistake. You get a dunk. Maybe you get an open shot. All those points matter in the course of a game, right? If you get an easy bucket here or there.
All right, let's go to the coaching moment. So I thought Knight staying calm. I had down.
Yeah.
The announcers reference that because again, Darrell gets his 3rd foul, and you thought, boy, that's a real moment there for Coach Knight to lose his mind. But he was super focused and super calm on the bench. None of those facial expressions that people like grew to recognize or the hysterics. He's just kind of sitting there. And then of course, real early, Tark breaks out the towel. It's not long into the game, and he is sucking on that wet towel on the sideline. That's wild.
And we reach a point where the Shark says, I got to get the towel out.
He got it out early today. I watched him nibbling over there about a minute ago.
Indiana moved into a 5-point lead when Keith Smart drove, spun, jumped, and connected. And the longtime UNLV coach, Jerry Tarkanian, turned to his trademark, his towel, for consolation. It didn't help. Isles' driving layup lifted Indiana's lead to 7.
Yeah, he likes that towel.
In the era of COVID, could he have gotten away with that? Would he have had to put that away?
I'd say they probably would have made him replace that every quarter.
Yeah.
And I thought it was funny that the announcer said, well, it's normally a white towel, but today it's got some decals or it's got some stuff on it. So maybe he should go back to the plain white towel because that's what works for him. I thought that was funny. But no, Coach Knight, it was crazy watching him and him just staying cool. That second foul that Thomas got on him, like, I didn't think it was a foul. So you know he was worked up about that. And then the third one, I mean, one of your best players is already out in the first half. But maybe that was his strategy. Maybe he thought if he got on him in that game, maybe they buckle a little bit. And maybe that's all it takes for UNLV to go on a big run.
Yeah.
You know, maybe that was the strategy. Like, it's not going to help to yell at them because if you put them under more pressure, maybe it goes the opposite way. We need them to stay smart.
It definitely seemed, though, that again along that theme of Knight being able to adapt in this game to the situation. Again, like you said, in an up and down game, to recognize like, hey, if we're gonna play fast and at this pace, there's gonna be some runs. Like there's gonna be enough possessions to get in and get out of the game, and I don't have to micromanage it as much. It's got to be like a mindset thing that he brought into that moment. What'd you think of UNLV having to run after halftime to out of the tunnel? That was pretty wild, right? Like, would that ever happen today? Like, they have to, just to set it up for the people listening, they I guess got Freddie, as Freddie tells it, they got notified late that the second half was about to start, and so they have to sprint from the locker room in this huge dome, and it's like all the way across the arena, and you can even see Tark running, like awkwardly for a long distance to get there. And I guess Knight, the announcers are saying like he's trying to get them to start the game and be like, hey, let's get this thing rolling, like not waiting for them to get there.
Seconds left toward the start of the second half. The Vegas players just filing out on the floor. They're not even getting an opportunity to warm up. That's very unusual.
It really is. I wonder if somebody forgot on Jerry's part to let his club know what the time was left on the clock. You can't come out without getting a little bit warm, and I'll be shocked if they could come out. Freddie Banks' example, never even touched the ball. They may start the second half without Jerry on the bench.
Does that fall in the same line of thinking that we used earlier when we said that IU came in with the prepared, ready to go, and UNLV was kind of loose with their plan? Because, I mean, there is no way you should come out of the tunnel in a Final Four game late.
I mean, I can't imagine. I talk about Knight mad. How mad would he have been if he hadn't gotten
He probably would have threw a chair at the person that didn't tell him.
Yeah.
I mean, something bad would have happened to the person that was supposed to tell him, right?
Oh my God.
I don't know that the communication doesn't get made that, hey, we got 5 minutes.
Wild.
5 minutes, 10 minutes. I mean,
wild that they would put it on TV too. Like they're just like, yeah, wow, that's a huge mistake.
They wouldn't do it now.
Yeah,
they would be like, let's go back to break, and then they'd be like, oh, we had a spill on the floor, so we had to wait to start until later.
Sure.
Like they would have made up some kind of excuse. Oh, technical difficulties on the shot clock, so we had to wait.
100%. What were your plays of the game? What were your favorite plays of the game?
The plays, I think that Hillman had some pretty big plays down the stretch. I mean, the one he got the rebound and took it back out and gave it to Alford for the three. That was a huge play.
Huge.
I mean, it doesn't really come up in the stat sheet for him, but I mean, it was an effort play, right? Like he boxed out, he got the rebound, and he was able to find him, and that was really a crucial part of the game. Like they were coming back. I mean, obviously Freddie Banks hitting. I mean, like we said earlier, I mean, some of those shots were just like
wild.
Yeah.
Didn't want to say anything the way it's going. There's a three from Banks. They're 2 and 3 with the threes, and Bass Knight knocks the ball out of bounds, and you've got to be impressed with the quickness that Vegas has shown Indiana early in this game.
Brent, they're not only quick, they've got size with quickness, and that's really hard to handle.
He was unconscious. Like he came to play. He was unconscious.
I mean, I should have went and looked it up to see.
He might have been listening.
What the record was for 3-point shots in a NCAA game, because I mean this was 87, so I mean it can't be much more than 10. I wouldn't imagine. So
can't imagine. His Dougie Fresh tunes that he was listening to must have really got him ready. I
better find that out, and I better listen to that before I go play basketball.
Right. You need to go next time before your next game. Listen to little Dougie Fresh. All right, let's get the long shot moment. What was the shot for you that defined the game from distance? Because there was a bunch to choose from. Did you have one that stood out?
The Alford end one was pretty big.
Alford couldn't do anything with Graham, so he sends it back to Isle.
Clinic by Graham right there.
Winds up in Callaway's hands. Now it's Steve's three.
Yes, and a good call by the ref. Graham stuck him right in the chest with his hand on the shot. Tarkanian wants a time.
There were so many that Banks hit. I know that's for the other team, but he hit so many tough shots. I mean, full sprint, just pulling up for three on the side, like even like fading a little bit to his body sideways and hitting it. I didn't know they shot shots like that in 87, tell you the truth. Like, not saying they weren't great shooters or anything. Back then, it was more fundamental. You go straight up, you go straight down. So that would probably have been, there's really not one, I guess.
He's still number 2 all time. There's Jeff Fryer, Loyola Marymount, 1990, hit 11.
Yeah, so I mean that just tells you how crazy. Yeah. I mean it's 87, like
the first year the 3-point line.
I mean it's unbelievable what he did, and you know what? Nobody really talks about it that much because they lost.
Well, they talked about it was funny because studying this game, of course, during this year, Wade's record for assists just got broken by the Kansas State player in that game. So pretty interesting. He had the record for assists in this game. So this was quite.
This is a record-breaking game.
It was monumental. All right, buy or sell take here. So we'll go back and forth on this one. Here's mine. The loss to Cleveland State the year before was key to IU winning the championship, because I see that I really am framing this up. Like I believe that them losing that game, Knight failing to make the adjustments in that game, the way that it haunted him, like propelled him to make this bold decision to take out UNLV, who I think was the best team in the tournament. Once they beat them, of course, it's not given against Syracuse by any means, but they seemed sort of destined, after you take out the best team.
I think that's part of it. I think the trip that we talked about before, I think that's part of it too, because I feel like the guys that came off the bench that were willing to play their role to a T and not try to be a superstar, they really just did what they had to do for IU to win. They didn't care if they shot. I think that has to do with chemistry was better. They were bonded together, and they wanted to win for everybody. At this level of basketball, you see it rarely that a player comes in at a game like this, and they don't care if they shoot or anything. All they care about is playing good defense, passing the ball, setting their players up. That's pretty rare that they're not going to try to make it their moment.
Relationships, I definitely, at times I think maybe underestimated how important that team continuity is, because you see a lot of talent. You want to think like, oh, that's going to win out. And you do need a certain level of talent, but talking to Freddie and talking to Joe Hillman, they talk about one of the first things they hit on isn't like, oh, how good Steve Alford was, like how good a teammate he was. Freddie talked about like how close him and Wade were, and how important it was when Smart and Dean Garrett came in and they fit into the culture. Like they don't hit on like these guys are good. It's like, of course they're good. They wouldn't be on this team if they weren't really good. Once you hit that, then you need that person who is willing to sacrifice some part of their game. Because that's the weird thing. Like all these guys were absolute uber superstars in high school. So at some point, you get to a certain level and you have to decide, how can I contribute to this particular team? And sometimes, what am I going to sacrifice to be on the court in those moments? It's going to happen and going to take some sacrifice at times.
And it's overlooking your ego. You're thinking, I should be on the court. You played basketball for a long time. If you're sitting on the sideline and say that a player's in there and he's not playing his best game, that's just a thought you're going to have no matter what. Like, what if I was in there? I could do better than this guy. I'll play a harder defense than that guy. Like, I would make that shot. I mean, it's always easier to do on the bench. You know what I mean? Like, you can always convince yourself on the bench.
Even easier if you're just watching it on TV.
Exactly. Because you hear a lot of people say, well, if I was there, I could beat that guy. No, you couldn't. Like, it doesn't. No. Maybe in your head, but you've been sitting on that couch for 30 years. You ain't getting up anytime soon.
Let's get to our final category, the big picture context. What did this game mean for the weekend and heading into the national championship? So after they win this, what do you think? What are you thinking about IU?
I think that it's just setting the stage, right? Like, I mean, you had one of the best games that college basketball played. The excitement of the fans. You're playing Syracuse, which is an unbelievable team. They got NBA players in their team too, really good players. I mean, I think it just sets it up for a really exciting national championship game that, after this game, you're probably thinking, man, it's going to be a high scoring, fast pace. It's going to be fun, right?
Yeah, for sure. And unknown too. I think that now it's like we've got one more, but it is about bringing it back around and keeping focused. And Hillman said that too. Like he was the one like telling Alford to, hey, we got one more to win. And Alford's like, hey, no, we need to take a moment to celebrate, because the journey, you can miss, I think, enjoying part of the journey sometimes. And really enjoying like the chance to play in this level of games and that type of atmosphere, the biggest crowd in NCAA history. I mean, that's neat, and your whole family's there. Like just appreciating that is pretty, had to be pretty special.
Well, most good coaches that you hear, like after they win a game like this, they say, well, we're going to take the next 6-8 hours to celebrate, and then when we get up in the morning, we're focused on the next game.
Back to it.
Yeah, because, I mean, you have to. Like you said, like, how exciting would it have been to be in this, even in the arena? Say that we weren't even playing the game. Say that we were sitting down low and watching this game. Like,
amazing.
It would have been so jacked up.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, I mean, it would have been insane, right?
New Orleans, right after that. Right? I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed. I'm getting ready for Monday. What did this mean for Coach Knight's career for IU as a whole? Because it's crazy to think that this is it. This is the last championship he wins. The last championship IU wins. Is this a good capstone to his championship run?
I think that this solidified him as one of the best coaches in history. I think he needed it because afterwards, I mean, he went one more Final Four, and he had like 4 more Sweet 16. So it isn't like he didn't do anything.
No, they had opportunities.
They didn't win championships.
They got unlucky, especially with the Calbert Chaney and Henderson one.
I believe they won a couple Big Tens after this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It's hard to keep a level where you're going to win this many national. I mean, look at like Coach K or any of the great coaches, right? I mean,
Dean Smith for years.
Yeah, they go through lows.
Coach Thompson only won one, which is crazy to think about because they were there 3 straight years.
I mean, how many coaches would have loved to won 3 national championships and won 11 Big Ten titles?
All of them.
Exactly. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that this was the end of it, but I think this definitely was the peak of the mountain, right?
Is this the worst IU championship team? So 76, the best, obviously.
I mean,
between 81 and this one.
I'll put it this way: any national championship team is pretty good.
That's a cop out.
This is the 30-year-old guy on the couch saying I go out there and play with him. Like Steve Alford was pretty good.
Yeah,
you know, I think that it's so hard. I mean, they were 30-4, and we're like the worst national championship.
The worst of amazing teams. They're all amazing. Obviously, I'm not saying that they're not.
So you're saying you're taking Isaiah over Alford?
I think so.
You think so? I mean, I don't know. That's too hard of a.
It's a hard question.
It's a hard question for sure. I wasn't prepared for that question.
I know. That's why I threw it at you.
Yeah, throwing me on the bus. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'm taking a 76 first, 81, then 87, but close. I just think that the 87 needed. I don't know. I just think Isaiah Thomas. I think it comes down to that, like 1v1 player. Like Isaiah Thomas has just got a bit more of another gear than Alford. Even though he's amazing, I just think that Thomas had.
They were different types of players.
They were, but like
for sure.
But just like like a force of nature type thing. That Isaiah Thomas had.
How would it have been if he would have played with Isaiah and he could have been a 2-guard?
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? Like, because really, Alford in this game, he's like a mini Curry. Not like he can shoot like Curry, but I mean, he can shoot good, but like running around off screens and everything else. Yeah. So imagine if he had
championship game. We'll talk about that.
He had a point guard like Isaiah to get penetrating and getting him open shots because he didn't get a lot of open shots. He worked for about every shot he got in this game.
For sure. All right, last question. We'll get out of here. Would this game be better with Bill Walton announcing?
Yep, and we're at Stanford today, and we've got the game of the millennium tonight.
It doesn't get any better than this.
I do. Learn to love your job, love pressure. Let's go.
I think can succeed here. Barack Obama. I don't think he's going to coach. So
well, you keep saying that, but why? Why are you so negative? Why do you just turn down? Party on. It's a wonderful day. It's Oregon. The sun was out. Come on.
I'm going to say 100%.
Oh my gosh! You zagged on that one. I love it. Why?
I just felt like there were some really exciting moments in this game. Like there was a huge block. I can't remember which one it was, but there was a huge block, and they were just like, and he knocks it out of bounds. I'm like, I was waiting for the excitement to come through the TV, through the TV, right? Like,
I like it. Bill would have been losing his mind. In this
he'd be like, "Oh my God, did he touch the ceiling when he touched?" You know, he would have been I just think that they were both really good announcers.
Yeah, they were.
They know their stuff.
Yeah.
But there just wasn't enough celebration towards big moments.
Yes.
Right? Like,
I like
it was more mellow tone. Man, he really shot that deep, or like he'd be like, "Oh my God, he shot that from outer space." Something of that nature. Like you just didn't get that. I didn't get that.
No, I can get down with it. I'm gonna stick with your answer and go with Bill. Bill Walton would have been better. It would have been hilarious. I don't know if Final Four. Although I think I forget now that I watched a recent Bulls game where he was doing the announcing, and there were games where he could rein it in somewhat. I think of like him. He's on the sideline in his tie-dye T-shirt. Like he did show up to some games in the '90s in like suits, so it's possible that he could have reeled it in just a little bit and still let us had a little more fun. But I think that you're right. He could have brought a little more excitement.
I mean, what do you think he would have been doing when Banks was hitting all these threes?
Oh my God.
He'd have been like, "Oh my God, who is this guy? Did he come from outer space?" Like,
yeah. I thought about them coming in from the locker room. Boy, he would have been all over that.
Were they drinking back there?
Yeah.
What was going on?
I should have gone back there with my bicycle and picked him up.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, sure.
And who has traveled that journey to the championship, Dean Garrett. Dean, your thoughts about this victory?
Hey, this is a great victory. Everybody thought we weren't going to win it. People were putting us down by 3 points and said Gilliam was going to do this. UNLV was too fast for us. But, hey, that shows you, we're a strong team ourselves, and we're not quitters at all.
Bob, I thought you got an incredible game off the bench today. Two guys came in and really used their heads to set a lot of things up. Steve Isle and Hillman.
Well, Hillman and Isle played very well for us in the regional and have played very well for us in a lot of situations all year. And that's what we recruited them for, to play very well for us.
It was a thinking man's game in regard to substitution patterns and the way that you played.
And you still understood it?
I think I did, and I thought you really did a super job taking advantage. When they went with a smaller club, let you stay with Hillman for a long time.
Well, what happened? There had to be a lot of changes made. It was really a hot day, and I thought the UNLV kids were just absolutely plastered, their jerseys. I thought our kids did a heck of a job hanging in the last 10 minutes. I thought we might just get worn down and be worn out in the last 10 minutes.
And let's go to James.
All right, Brent, thank you very much. Coach Tarkanian, you had your team in the locker room a very long time at halftime. What did you see in what Indiana was doing that you were trying to counter?
Well, the first half, I didn't think that we played as hard as we could defensively. And secondly, we didn't play well, and yet we were only 6 down, so we kept thinking that we could come back. We just felt there was a few things we just had to toughen up our defense and get more intense and get up in the passing lanes, which we didn't do. We were our defense was tough for about 10 seconds, and then it broke down, and we didn't sustain it today. We came to a big game like this, and we weren't as quick as we'd been earlier in the year, and it's a painful loss, but I'm so proud of this team that, it hurts a lot, but I'm extremely proud of our ball club. And
obviously a tough loss, but you wore number 1 very well. Coach, thank you very much.
Thank you.
To the delight of the Indiana cheerleaders. The Hoosiers made more than 65% of their shots in the second half. Rick Calloway made 3 out of 4. Only the long-range bombing of Banks, who scored on 10 of 19 three-point attempts and collected 38 points, kept UNLV in contention. With less than 2 minutes to play and Indiana up by 7, Banks missed. But Armin Gilliam took the rebound and scored, and the Runnin Rebels were still alive. They drew within 4 points when Banks sank another three-pointer with 1 minute and 11 seconds to play. But then UNLV missed its next 5 shots. And when Steve Isle turned a driving layup into a three-point play with only 13 seconds to go, Indiana had a 9-point lead and the game in hand. The final margin was 4 points. A disappointment, naturally, for Tarkanian. A big victory for Knight, shooting for his 3rd NCAA title and for Indiana's 5th. It would be his Hoosiers against the Orangemen of Syracuse in the 49th Annual National Collegiate Basketball Championship.
I hope you enjoyed our game recap. Keep listening for my interview with Joe Hillman, 6th man on this Indiana team. He's got amazing insights about what brought the team together and the courtside and on the court view of this game. Well, I want to talk about, before we get into kind of the setting the scene in New Orleans, the kind of origin story, because you're hinting at some of that stuff as we're talking about this year's IU team. But I watched the big trip, and then I watched the Cleveland State game leading up to this, and I was thinking about origin stories for teams. And you guys got, in this era, get more of a chance to build that camaraderie. But I think it's a misnomer that teams don't get that. There are some players that come for a year and don't, but I think by and large, even this year's IU team has a lot of guys that have been there for a long time. So yeah, I just wondered about the origin story and what you thought about building, the building of this 1987 team. There's a lot of moving pieces. Was there one thing that catalyzed it, or do you think it's just kind of everything coming together with the transfers in, the big trip when you guys are younger?
Well, the big trip gets a lot of, I think everybody talks about that. Yeah. I'm not so sure that I never bought into that because I thought we had a pretty good year the next year. I think the bigger thing was Dean and Keith coming to the team, and not only their ability and beyond their ability, they bought in and they said, okay, what do we need to do to play? Where do we need to go? Now, Dean was a little easier because, hey, he was just kind of a back to the basket kind of grind. Keith was way more, let's get it up and down. And he, kind of had to be throttled back a little bit and get into the system. But those two guys buying into what we were trying to do, I think is a way bigger thing than the trip. I think the year prior, we actually saw a flip of Daryl Thomas because Daryl went from being kind of a good player and just kind of a role guy to we got to have you. And the year prior, he ended up having to play center, got hurt, played through being hurt, and he realized, hey, I can be a man, and then now he's a senior. And Daryl was such a good college basketball player.
Yeah.
I mean, and people underestimate how good he was. He scored for us. He defended the best post player, and he rebounded for us. I mean, Daryl was a great college basketball player. Yeah. And, now Steve comes back. He's a year stronger. And, I mean, we had a core that kind of knew what to do. And now adding two guys that athletically and size-wise helped us. And again, them buying into what we were trying to do, they don't get enough credit for that.
Yeah. How did you guys bring them in? Because I think as teammates, because I think that goes maybe under the radar a little bit. UNLV, it gets the kind of JUCO moniker that, Tark's out there looking for guys from JUCO, but these guys were junior college transfers. And I'm sure there's like some, if I'm just putting myself in like your shoes or one of the players' shoes, like these guys coming in from the outside, some of my playing time could potentially go to them and just kind of sizing them up and figuring out how you guys fit as teammates.
Aaron, nobody didn't worry about that at Indiana because under Bob Knight, if you played well in practice, you were going to play. Nobody could ever go to Coach Knight and say, I'm getting screwed here by playing. Because every single day out there, you had a chance to do it.
Okay.
Our practices were brutal. I mean, we had 7 guys on red and 8 guys on white. And the 7 guys that were in red at the end of the week or before game time were the guys that are going to play. And the hardest position, by far the hardest position in Indiana was the 7th guy or 6th guy because you were replaceable. And those guys that were 8, 9 on the road, they were fouling, they were grabbing in practice to get their jersey switched. And, so nobody can complain about that under a Bob Knight system. Now, the year prior, we were really undersized. Had a lot of those guys redshirting. So when we had the undersized bringing in Dean, who was kind of a late bloomer, was really a no-brainer. All of a sudden, we got a 6'10" guy.
Yeah.
And so and Dean came from Dean's family's military. I mean, Dean's very disciplined. He played for a guy in junior college that was a tough guy that got after him. And I don't think the transition was as hard for Dean just because big guys, you don't have to see the court as much as a guard. So It's a much different thing for Keith. And Keith did a really nice job. His athletic ability allowed him to do some things that we just hadn't had. And then he kind of fit in. And really what kind of got Keith going in that last couple of games was just that we kind of went to a 3 guard and he got to float around and not have to handle the ball. He was catching the ball on the move and going to going to the basket with angles and instead of having to beat everybody off the dribble type of deal. So I don't know. I mean, that to me, the trip was good because we really had a terrible year that 84, 85 year. And so now we go on the trip, started off horrible. And then it got pretty darn good. And we started playing really well at the end. And then the following season, we were pretty damn good. Everybody remembers Cleveland State, but we were 14-3 tied with Michigan going up to Michigan.
Yeah.
And we got absolutely drilled up in Michigan.
Which happens.
Lost by 30, and coach went crazy. He was really mad and upset that we didn't compete for the Big Ten, and we had a terrible week practice leading up to Cleveland State. Horrible. And I remember telling people, we're going to get our ass beat by Cleveland State. Oh, no way. Then I said, I'm telling you, this is a terrible matchup for us because they are small like us. Daryl was our biggest guy at 6'7". Their center was 6'6". They press. We are a terrible matchup for them. And that week of practice was so bad. We couldn't, the red shirts and team on the white jerseys were killing the red. They couldn't break the press. We started off pressing with 6 guys just to make it harder, and they couldn't do anything. Finally went to 5, and it was just a bad week of practice. And coach had us on edge a little bit from just drilling us, from losing and not competing up in Michigan. I mean, we lost 80-50 up there, and he was mad about the fact that we just didn't fight and scratch and claw. And then in reverse, though, we go to the UNLV the following year, and the biggest thing that stands out to me was our preparation for the UNLV game.
Yeah, go into that, because you got this week leading up to this, and of course the LSU game was close too.
Well, the LSU game we probably should have lost.
Yeah, 1-point win there, so that's a classic tournament.
We didn't play very well in the LSU game, but we scrapped and we hung in there and we made some plays at the end. And so that was on a Sunday. We come back Sunday night and got back pretty late, because I think we played at 5:30 or something, maybe. Maybe it was a 5 o'clock game. We didn't get back till 11:30 on Sunday night. Get to the Bloomington airport, and there's probably 10,000 people. So everybody's telling us how great we are and we're doing all this. And I had played a minute, made a really big play in the LSU game. Got out of the break, steal, laid it in, got fouled. And so the next day of practice, which is Monday, we don't play again until Saturday. And we're thinking, all right, we're pretty tired. Well, it says get dressed, get taped, which meant we're going full blast on Monday. And, we all expected maybe to say get dressed. Get dressed meant we're going to walk through some stuff. So get dressed, get taped, go through our normal routine. We go out, we're shooting around, and coach says, let's go in. So we go in, and Philly's sitting there, and he's got this stat sheet. He says, Hillman, Jesus, son, you scored 3 points in a minute. You think about if you played 40 minutes, you'd score 120. And I go, well, tell the dumb son of a bitch to play me more. And coach walks around. Hillman, there'll never be a day at Indiana when you play 40 minutes. And everybody laughed and giggled.
Set you up,
we go out to practice, though, and we can't do anything right. We're doing our normal just four lines, and we do the 3-man weave. And we get into just some drills, and coach is going crazy. This is absolute fucking bullshit. If this is all the effort we're going to put in, then we might as well not even go down to New Orleans. We might as well even forget about it. I got no interest. If you don't have any better effort and wanting to go down and play 80 minutes, then forget it. Get the hell out of here. Kicks us out. But 15 minutes into the practice.
Wow.
So we go into practice. We go in the locker room there. Steve's like, hey, come on, guys, come on. We got We go back out there, and coach is in the middle of the court. Says, nope. Get the hell out of here. And when you guys are right, you let me know when you want to practice, but I don't want to see this anymore. And the lights go out in Assembly Hall.
Wow. Amazing.
So flash ahead, we come back on Tuesday, do our normal thing. We go in, he says, all right, here's the deal. I've just watched all this film that we've seen, and here's the situation. We are getting rid of the 4-pass rule. We're going to go play Vegas, and we're going to run up and down with them. I do not want to play against them for 40 seconds, 45 seconds. They'll wear us out, and we're going to lose. But they will give us wide open shots in the break and breaking their press, and we're going to take the first good shot every single possession. So we're all like, holy God, are you kidding me?
Did you think he was crazy? Like say that like that's such a change.
No. He said, hey, I've watched it. If we break the press and stop, they're gonna smother us. And they'll make it really hard for us to score. But if we break the press, we will get layups and wide open shots. And so we go out and practice, and we had a great practice. And coach came in and wrote up 80 minutes, 2 games. He said, hey, here's the deal. We're going to New Orleans to win 2 games. You guys want to go down to New Orleans like these other teams are going to go down there tonight and tomorrow? That's fine. You want to go have fun in New Orleans? Go do it when you graduate. We're going down to win 2 games. And if you don't want to go down there and win 2 games, then let's just stop right now. He walked out. Great practice Wednesday, great practice Thursday. We got to be down in New Orleans. I mean, we're sharp. I mean, he's pushing. He's clapping. I mean, he's got an energy about this is going to work. This is going to work. We got to be down in New Orleans at 1:30 for our mandatory shoot around. So we're going to practice at 9 o'clock in the morning. And so we do our normal little routine, warm up, go out, and now we're going to start practice. And coach says, all right, red, bring it in. White, convert on misses. And Alford drills a 3 on the first possession. And Knight says, let's go. We're ready to win now. We go in, shower, get on the bus, and go down.
Wow, amazing.
But when Alford drilled that three, I mean, I still get chills when I say that. And he said, "We're ready to win a national championship. Let's go." I mean, it was great. It was unbelievable. So we had a great week of practice, and we had a great belief that what we were going to do against Vegas was going to work, letting us run up and down the floor with them. And nobody thought we were going to do it. If you watch the game again, Billy Packer goes, "I don't know what Bob Knight's doing. This is crazy. He's running up and down." Because we got wide open shots and a million layups. If it's not for Freddie Banks going crazy in the last 3 minutes, we beat them by 15.
Okay, I got to ask you one question, rewinding. Were you guys talking to each other? Because I know after playing it, I like to recap things. But were you guys talking in the locker room, talking each other up? Like, this is going to work. We can do this. Or
No, because we always had a great belief in what we were doing anyways. I mean, the one thing at Indiana that group had, and Knight instilled it, and probably in the 81 team, and the 75 and 76 and the 80 team. I mean, he created and made it. You were more fearful for losing than you like to winning. You hate to lose more than you like to win. Okay. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because you just didn't want to go through all the shit. And we had a great core that everybody knew, hey, here are the guys. Here's what we're going to do. If you get an opportunity to play, just contribute. Just be a positive part of the game. Whether you play 2 minutes, 1 minute, doesn't matter. You don't have to be spectacular because our other guys are going to do that. And everybody had an understanding of what your role was. The following year, we had none of that. In my senior year, that all came back again. Everybody knew their role. And it was just amazing on how those teams that kind of have a good understanding of what you are, they just gel better than when you have a bunch of guys trying to do things that they probably shouldn't do. And so going into that, there was never any of that. Now, if we were playing bad, there was, we had the capabilities of guys getting on each other and pushing each other a little bit. And then sometimes you just didn't need to say stuff, guys knew, but going into that, it was almost a relief of, oh my gosh, he's going to let us do our thing. And he's taking the reins off. So, and then I think once you got out there and we got into the flow against Vegas, and it was, you could see he was right. We were getting whatever we wanted. And the interesting thing that we did too in that game, which was really good, not at the start, but I don't know, somebody got into early foul trouble and Isle had to come into the game.
Mm-hmm.
And Isle just started bringing the ball up against their press, and they had a big guy guarding it, and that was no problem. They were doing whatever, kick it over, and then when I came in, they had a forward guarding me, and we could just bring it up. And so we eliminated a lot of their pressure by using a guy that was being guarded by a big guy, but then they would still do that stupid trap and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that game was a physical drain because of how fast it went up and down the court. But it was easy to get offensively. It was easy.
You guys had a flow.
There wasn't, but they didn't do a lot of holding and grabbing and whatever. You just played. Where when you play a team like Illinois or whatever, they sat on you and they jumped screens and Vegas did none of that.
What about offensively? Like what did you notice when you were watching them coming back at you? Because they had some unbelievable, like you said, performances, like shooting. I mean, they put up 35 threes. I had to double check that before we came on.
How many they made?
35. They made 13 out of their 35 threes.
Well, that was the thing, though. We knew they were going to jack up a bunch of shots. And so, our deal on that was if we could contest some of those, we were going to get a lot of long rebounds and be able to go with it. Now, they did not shoot the ball very well, but we took away Banks early. And then we let Wade shoot. Wade was like, "Man, go ahead. That's hey, you're open because we want you open."
Yeah.
And Gilliam was a tough matchup.
He was tough.
He was very good at that great mid-range jumper. But then there are other guys. Graham wasn't a great shooter, and Baz Knight wasn't a great shooter. And so we knew we could kind of sag in off of some of those guys, which now we're allowed to no help off of Banks. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, in the last 2.5 minutes, Banks made
crazy 4 or 5
stuff. Threes. I remember he makes the one right in front in the left corner, 2 of them back to back, one over me and then one over Isle. I'm like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And so, then they missed a free throw, which or we got a long rebound on one of them, and Isle got the dunk, and then that was game. I think they hit a 3 at the buzzer.
They did, yeah.
What it was, but,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't. I mean, there's no chance we didn't think going into that game that we weren't going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people are, oh my God, Vegas, this, no chance. We thought we were the best team in the country.
Did you notice when Tark started chewing on the towel? Because on TV, they call it so much easier to see some of these things. But I'm just curious about, like, from a player's perspective, the ebbs and flow of the game. Because I think you're right. You guys changed your style so much more than they did. So I just wondered, like, what they must have been thinking, or what you maybe picked up on from their players. Like, did they look like, wow, these guys are really, because you guys put up 53 in the first half.
Tark was always nervous. Right?
Yeah, I know.
But and he recruited me when I was in high school.
Yeah, so, I know. I remember you saying that.
But they no, I mean they didn't. They knew they were in for it once we got going. I don't think they thought they were going to come in and steamroll us. I think they thought we were going to slow it down or whatever. But I don't think they didn't go into that game thinking, oh my God, Indiana, we're going to drill these guys. There's no way. I mean, we'd only lost 4 games all year, and we were pretty damn good. So yeah, I mean, it was there wasn't a lot of chatter out on the court. There wasn't a lot of chatter in the Syracuse game either. So the guys were just playing.
What about coaching moments like in the game then? So you mentioned kind of leading up to it, the perspective taking and the ability to kind of shift your guys' perspective to, like, we're gonna run and instill that confidence or that trust in you guys to execute that game plan. But what about within the game adjustments?
Well, we really didn't make any adjustments in that game because things were working offensively. They made some changes defensively, but what was working for us was staying off of Wade and letting him shoot. But then he got some, when you don't guard a guy, it does make it a lot easier for the guy to make passes.
Yeah.
He ended up with a bunch of assists, but a lot of that was because guys were making shots. But no, there really wasn't. It was a pretty positive deal the whole time. There was never really anything. We got in a little bit of foul trouble, which always is kind of a nerve-wracking deal. I think it was Daryl and Dean, or Daryl and Callaway got some early fouls, and other guys came in. And I think sometimes that always helps too, getting other guys in there that feel good. And then I think he was just kind of monitoring, minutes and play and keeping guys fresh. But yeah, I don't remember anything specifically in that game at all. Not as much as what I remember in the Syracuse stuff. I mean, he was pretty calm that whole game. He may have barked at the ref here or there, but there was nothing negative with any players. Like some games, like in the Auburn game that year. I mean, we just laid an egg the first 5 or 6 minutes, and he went crazy, and he was ripping guys. Everybody remembers that because that first 6 or 8 minutes of the Auburn game, we're down 12 or something, and he was going crazy, just waking us up basically. But the Vegas game was pretty much, it went kind of what I think he thought it was going to do. Going to be a fast-paced game, up and down. We're going to get a lot of shots. They were going to get buckets because they had guys that could create their own shot, and they had good players. And it went according to what I think he thought in his mind was going to happen. Going to be a fast-paced game, up and down. We're going to get a lot of shots. They were going to get buckets because they had guys that could create their own shot, and they had good players. And it went according to what I think he thought in his mind was going to happen.
Well, then, it turns out the way you guys want it. I mean, it's 97-93. Again, he put up 53 in the first half. Also, a note from the halftime. I loved Tark somehow missing the halftime buzzer, and he's like, they're all like running out onto the court. They didn't get to warm up at all. Yeah.
I mean, literally. The locker room, so the court was down on the one end, and I mean you had to go a long way.
Yeah,
it was a 2-minute jog. I mean, it was a long way.
Yeah, it was like quarter of a mile probably.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, he came in late, and Knight is on the court trying to get the refs to like, hey, let's go. The buzzer had gone off, and like Tark's like jogging onto the court still at the time time had elapsed. And
I don't even remember this. What was the score at half?
53. You guys had 53. They had 47. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know we got ahead by 12 or 13 at one point too. they kind of came back. And but yeah, I mean, that Vegas game, there was just never any frantic moment. Maybe a little bit at the end when they just keep draining. I mean,
just started hitting threes.
Made 4 or 5 threes.
Crazy threes. Yeah.
And so, but we were ahead by enough there to was almost like, okay, don't foul. We're going to make our free throws. And it does help when you got a team that can make free throws. It does help the mindset at the end of games because hey, get it to guys that can make free throws. They got to foul. You're going to make them. That's a soothing deal at the end of games. But we also trust each other. And Coach put in guys that he knew were going to be able to make plays at the end. And I think that's a huge thing in having good teams is trusting guys that they're going to make good decisions. You're not always going to make a play. You're not always going to make every shot, but you're going to make good decisions. And during that year, we didn't lose. We lost Illinois on a close game at Illinois. I don't even remember. We got drilled at Iowa.
They were good too.
Pretty bad. And I don't even know the other loss, but we won close games.
Yeah.
And we lost one close game. So we were comfortable that way.
I mean, I think that stood out to me so much. Like, despite the fast pace of this, you guys never seemed in a hurry. 62% from the floor. So like you said, it goes to that we started out is like, there's so much emphasis on the three. And I understand the statistical measure of it, but if you get really good shots and shoot 62%, you're giving that's what their, defense was giving you. You guys took it and took advantage of it.
Well, yeah. And when you think about that and him saying, let's take the first good shot that we get. If somebody's open, shoot it. That takes all the thought process out of it. Oh, hey, if I catch the ball, is this a good shot or should I wait to the end of the shot clock? Or, we can maybe work this little. No, catch, shoot, go to the basket. I mean, there was just so much room out there in that game that I remember because they overplayed so many things. And we did a good job of handling the ball that when they came in and trapped or did whatever, man, all of a sudden now we're 4-on-3. And I just remember so much freedom to get to the basket. And Vegas did a terrible job of defending away from the ball. They were great on the ball, but they stood and watched when they weren't on the ball. And man, you could cut and screen and get. But again, you go back to why are you taking threes when you can make twos all day long? Or you can get to the foul line. I'm not a big, but going back to that was the first year of the NCAA.
Yeah. And it comes in handy the next game when Steve hit 7.
Going forward, if you're hard to guard and you get to the line, you are just, it's amazing. Think about this. If you get to the free throw line and you make 1 of 2 every single time, you score 1 point every single time you make one. That's like shooting 50% from the field. Okay, you shoot 50% from the field, you got 2 possessions, you score 2 points. If you get fouled and make 1 every single time, and you're going to make more than 1. So getting fouled every single time down the floor is a way better deal than shooting 50%.
Yeah, for sure.
And getting fouled comes from being hard to guard. And I mean, that's just kind of what the 3-point thing has become such a big part of college basketball. It's become a huge part of the NBA game too, because these analytic guys are like, well, if you make 33% of your threes, blah, blah, blah. But if you took a deal where threes were made and when they were missed, I guarantee you shooting a 3 early in the clock isn't as good as inside, out, step into it, knock it down.
They're with you on the free throw thing too. You're right on that. That's a great. Yeah, I mean, that's a great thing. The best guys
games now with Indiana, they shoot 8, 10, 12 free throws. We shoot 30. We had games where we shot almost 50.
That's a huge advantage
from moving and being hard and all the screening and creating guys. You get guys on your hip, and now you get a guy on your hip. It's almost impossible not to foul.
Yeah, and you're not getting and then you're not also, like, if you're just shooting threes, you're not creating that foul where you could get deeper into the other team's bench and get them changing up their lineups too.
And when you miss threes, long rebounds are going the other way.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it just is.
For sure.
And so it's interesting on the whole, and I hear it all in football all the time. I watch NFL games all the time. It's analytics tell you to do this, but analytics don't have any game time, game situational concept whatsoever. Yeah, you make 33% of them, but okay, you make 50% of your free throws every single time.
Yeah. You're right.
Give me those. And again, you're going to shoot better than 50%.
Yeah.
So, and that's, again, you go back to that Vegas game. I think getting off to a good start and seeing that we could run up and down and we were making shots and we were having success, success breeds more success. And then you get into a game. I always tell people it's way harder watching the game from the bench. Like, you get nervous watching the game. Once you get in, it's fine.
I'm nervous watching, even I know the outcome.
It's way harder. Like, I watch my kid play. It's way, I said to my mom, we were watching my kid play a hockey game and college hockey game. And my mom was at the game. And I said, my dad's passed away. And I said, how did dad watch these games? And she goes, oh my God, he used to just pull his hair out. He was so nervous, and, anxious, and there's just anxiety because you want your kid to do so well. But, when you're sitting there on the bench and you're watching, it's like, and you're going to go in, but at what point, what are you going to do? But once you get in and you get run up and down the floor, now you're into it, and it's pretty easy. Because all that kind of goes away and it's instinct. It's way harder watching.
What about, okay, so you guys really blew speaking of analytics things that people always talk about. People always talk about you can't shoot in a dome, but it didn't seem to affect you guys. So was that like in your head? Did just no one talk about it? Or like how did you overcome that?
Here's the thing, Aaron, on that. So we played in the Hoosier Dome, and the Hoosier Dome's was a bubble. The lighting was terrible, tough to shoot. You got to the Superdome, and they put it all down the one end zone, and everything else was black except the court. They really darkened the court. So the depth perception at the Superdome, when you do it in an end zone, wasn't nearly as bad as what it was like when you do it with a bubble top where it's pretty light. And so I think that made it a little bit easier. And they brought those stands were brought in, and they set that thing up pretty well. Now they put it in the middle of the field, which I think is tough. And the domes are tough because it's not so bad when you're head on. It's when you get to the sides and you start shooting and you're looking up and you don't see the rim. I mean, it's just, it is a depth perception deal. It takes a little time, but the the Superdome in New Orleans, they did a really good job of darkening and really making the stands dark to where you had a pretty good shooting background.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Well, what about after the game then? You guys had kind of had this serious approach to leading up to the game, very focused and leaving late even to New Orleans. But what about after the game? Is there just like right back to the focus? Is there a chance to celebrate, or what's that?
Well, it was interesting because Coach, when we were going down there, said, hey, we're not going to do anything different. We're going down there and play 2 games, and we're going to do our normal routine. And he was really big on routine, really big on routine. And so I remember Isle gets the dunk, and everybody's going crazy. And I remember grabbing Alford and I think it was maybe Daryl because we were out in the corner. I said, oh, we got one more game to play. This isn't it. And Steve was like, shut up, Joe. We won this game. We'll worry about Monday later. Yeah. And I was, but yeah, let's see. We played the late game. So we got back fairly late. We were tired. I mean, it was a drain. We didn't get, we may not even got everybody back to the hotel. In fact, I think some guys left because we had to get drug tested. So they pulled 8 guys.
They talked about that.
Yeah. And we didn't get back until pretty late on that Saturday night. And then what was really interesting is we got up and Coach looked at Steve. We were meeting in one of the hotel ballroom things where we'd walk through stuff. And Coach asked Steve and said, hey, do we want to go shoot around today? Steve kind of said, nah, I don't know. I'm pretty tired. And or we all said, yeah, let's. And Coach said, no, hey, look, we're tired. We're gassed. Maybe we should just walk through it. And everyone went, yeah, we're fine because we're going to go shoot around Monday morning. We're good. So Sunday, we didn't do anything but walk through, watch a lot of film, walk through, started setting up some of what we were going to do defensively against Syracuse. Now, offensively, we didn't have to set much up because, if the other team played a man-to-man, we're going to run a regular offense and you're going to guard us, and that there's no setting anything up. Yeah. But if you watch the last play, they go to a box and one, which kind of messed us up after the timeout, and we had to kind of rearrange everything. It's a good thing we had 29 seconds left. But, so that Sunday, and it was pouring down rain, really humid down in New Orleans. And so guys were tired. He wanted us to get our legs back. We walked through a couple times. We ate. We basically just rested. Nobody left the hotel. We didn't do anything. And then come Monday, we went up, did a shoot around Monday morning, probably 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, walked through a bunch of stuff. And then you didn't play. Well, we were playing down there about 8:15. So just normal, kept everything the same. I mean, Coach Knight was really good about not making any game bigger than another one. I mean, and so us going down there on Friday, the day before the game, like we always did, it just didn't become a bigger event.
Yeah, consistency for young people is big.
Keeps people on a level keel, and you just it helps with the anxiety of the moment. Young guys, 18 to 22 years old. I mean,
you get out of your routine, you can really start thinking about it. That's interesting.
So I did like what he said, hey, you guys want to go down to New Orleans and have fun, go do it when you graduated. I think Vegas and them, a lot of those teams, two of them got there Tuesday and the other, they were all down there by Wednesday. It was like, well, what are you going to do? That's crazy.
I know.
So that I think that helped us, our mindset for sure.
Knight, Tark the Shark, camaraderie, the Superdome, and legendary players. Thank you for joining us for this look back at Indiana versus UNLV 1987 Final Four game. Iconic Seasons 1987 is a Principal podcast production. I'm your host and executive producer, Aaron Meyer. Robert was my contributor on this episode. If you enjoy this series, head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, and follow the show. Make sure to leave us a rating and review. It really helps us and helps others discover the show. If you want to get in touch with any questions or comments about this show, send us an email. Our email address is hardwoodhistory@gmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter @Principal Meyer. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back soon with the final 2 episodes of Iconic Seasons 1987.